So this is our homepage on ValuechainScore.com, and if we go to the DMA tool, we are an existing user, so we go to the existing users, and because I'm already logged on, I can see the DMAs that are assigned to me that I've created in the past. And of course, it depends on the reporting year, the company that I'm doing the DMA for, and I can open one of those DMAs, and this takes us into the overall dashboard and the view. And you may recognize some of these steps that we're taking you through, and there's an audit trail and a step-by-step process guide. So the DMA project is how you define it. And the next one is on getting the actual custom topics. So there's some default topics as defined in the EFRAG. We have included them by default, but you can add additional ones. You can get additional subtopics. So if we look at that, for example, here in the Configure tab, you see some additional topics were defined around cybersecurity, piracy, and we can edit those topics. We can change those names if we want to, but the ones that are standard and are required by the CSRD process, you cannot change or edit them. And you can open this up, and you can add custom ones underneath if you want to, but the existing ones you cannot change. Okay, so that's how you can configure your custom topics. So once you've defined your custom topics, you can set up your internal stakeholders. Now you can already do that. This means that these symbols mean this is in progress. These are not yet enabled. There are no external surveys, for example, is not yet enabled because no external stakeholders have been defined yet. So once you have defined those, that process step will be unlocked. So there's some logic behind it. Obviously, that logic we can redefine to suit the consultant's needs. So when you look at the internal stakeholders, you can add them here by clicking Configure. And once you say this is the sufficient number of internal stakeholders, you can then choose to finalize that. Now, every step has a finalize button, and by finalizing it means this is signed off by the appropriate authority. And that is then all recorded in an audit trail so that every process step has its own information and audit trail that you can then show to an accountant. And by the way, so Lewy, you might be interested to know at the back end, we're using blockchain and public-private keys and digital sign-offs to keep track of all that. So the heart of a DMA is the various surveys. And if we open one of these surveys, you can see the progress overall. And here you see this is the environment. Now you can open that up. And what we have here is the spreadsheet that was developed in last year and that was used last year. We basically implemented those questions. And to the right, you can see an overview of what that indicates. So for example, 2 minuses means there's a 2 minuses here. If we change it to 3, it becomes 3 minuses. If we say, actually, this is not a threat, this is an opportunity, you can do plus and it will change to pluses. So suppose you have this topic and you could say, well, this is both a threat and an opportunity. Then you can duplicate this question and then you can have in one score the plus and the other one the negative. Now the SEO, that is the range. So this is national, local, and 3 is global. And that will affect both the scoring and it will affect how that is displayed here in the overall, like this is global. So that shows you that icon. IC is the irremediable character. So if this is positive, that is not relevant. So those are disabled, so you don't have to worry about filling that in. But if it's negative, you have to actually put that in. In this case, it's -3. It says 3, which is very hard to fix. So that yields a higher score. Now, if you want to switch around and you say, well, I want to look at E3, you click here in this button and it will go to E3. I've said, actually, that's fine. All of this is not relevant. I can say not relevant. And of course, that is an insufficient comment, but that automatically gets filled in all the subtopics. And if you say, well, we're okay with that, then I can click that box and you see that's done now. And that is how we guide you through those surveys. Now, if you at some point click a save button and say, oh, actually I did that by mistake, you can always go back to an earlier version and load that and save that again. So you can go back if you want in time, either to restore or to just have a view of what the status was of the survey some time ago. Every item has a comment field where you can provide some background as to why you score it a certain way. So once you've defined your internal stakeholders and you went through all of them, you have, by the way, material impact and financial impact type surveys, just like in the Excel sheet. So if you go to this is the financial impact one, and you see that here you've got the S, the U, and the L type questions. And here you also see what that represents. And there's also all the comments here that are there to support the particular scoring that was done here. So once you're done with that, they're all finalized, then you can finalize this step. And so the way we've defined it in our tool is that there is a representative from the company that actually approves this step by step. We call that the CSRD decision maker, and that person has to then approve so that there is an acknowledgement from the company that this is indeed what we all agree. And that is then, of course, gets captured in the audit trail. Well, not necessarily. So there are topics that are relevant for some internal stakeholders and not for others. And so it's important that the relevant stakeholder fills in the right topics that are relevant for them. Mm-hmm. The way it works in our overall scoring system, and we can show that up here. So our scoring is shown here in a materiality matrix, mm-hmm. and then in a legend, and the scores that you see are the maximum score filled in by all stakeholders. So if one stakeholder says this is important to me, that will flow up and show here. So there is no averaging out. So if, let's say, one stakeholder comes up with a very good point why a topic is relevant, and all the other ones had missed it, it is not, let's say, watered down by averaging. We always take the maximum score.
So we used it actually in the same way as you probably use like your own Excel sheet. So they're in workgroup sessions, and that's why the tool is used more with consultants, with people who can guide you through it. And like basically the consultant or the person who's in charge for working with this tool will put in the scores, but groups of internal surveys are actually working groups. So it says like Verve client, but there was a group of maybe 3 people. And then during the workgroup session, there was a discussion made of the topics and the scores. And then prior to that, there was already gone through the list of the long list, seeing like which topics can you eliminate completely. And then based on these surveys, you can make it even shorter for the external stakeholders and then select which ones you use. So like on itself, I don't think you can, of course, do that if you give people instructions and they have enough knowledge on CSRD, but it's more meant like in work group sessions and do it together with someone who has knowledge of the tool and CSRD.
I'd like to go to the next step, which is the shortlist questionnaire. So once you've got all these questions filled in, you get an overview of all the questions. And here you see the FM score and the IM score. And you can select which ones do you want to include in your shortlist. And the shortlist is the shortlist of questions that you want to discuss with external stakeholders. And in this case, you see these have been selected. And if I go then to the external stakeholders, if I created an external stakeholder, I'm just going to do that now. Let's say external. I'll just create a generic name here. I go back and then you see it. I can fill that in, and you see the shortlist is then presented to me. I can only fill in the ones that I had selected as relevant in the shortlist. Now, if I am working with this external stakeholder and they want to say, but other topics are also relevant for me, not just the ones you selected, you can always switch back to the long list, and then you can have the full list of questions available to that particular stakeholder. And so this is basically a switch between the long list and the short list. So once that is finalized, then your management decision is enabled, and in the management decision, you get to select, just like in the, which is a similar screen like in the short list. You select which ones are relevant, and if there's a higher score, that's higher than the threshold, our current threshold is 4.5. If it's higher than that, then there's a mandatory comment that you have to put in as if you do not include it. So if you don't include something that's scored higher than 4.5, then you have to say, well, this is the reason why I don't include it. This is why I don't think it's relevant. So in the end, it's the management decision here that gets signed off, and those will be the topics that the company decides to report on. So obviously, there's different ways to visualize the various results. So we already saw this, and you can, for example, click on this one, and you can see the subtopics as they were scored. And here you see there's these different ones that were scored for E5. In this particular view, you already see various quadrants, the 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants. If I want to close this, you click here again. I go to the quadrants, and here you see the main topics on the quadrants. If they want to see a bit more detail, you click this open, and here you see the plus and the minus. So if different stakeholders, if one stakeholder thought something was an opportunity and the other one thought it was a risk, you'll see both a plus and a minus. In this case, pollution was seen universally by all stakeholders as a risk, and you can see where they end up in the quadrants. You see, in this case, there was nothing in the top right-hand corner in the quadrant, but there were some in the other quadrants that are higher than 4.5. Now, another way to visualize this is in a bar chart, where you see financial materiality on one side of the y-axis and the impact materiality on the other side. And you can see how those are scored relatively. You can click on one of these, and that will open up the subtopics, and where you also have the financial materiality and the impact materiality. One of the things that I mentioned a few times already is the audit trail. So we can visualize that here. And if a step has been finalized, you can see when it was finalized, who it was signed off by. You can also open up these various process steps. You can see all the changes that have happened. For example, a name change, or you can see when internal surveys were conducted, when they were changed, when they were uploaded. This applies to basically all of these steps. So you saw that just now I added a stakeholder external one. You see when that was added and who it was added by. So this keeps tracks of all that are going on through the process. There's a few other things you have here. You've got reports, so I can print everything out to a PDF file that you can then save this either as a PDF file or print to your local printer. Another way to export it is in an Excel file. So in this case, we've got this export. So if I open that up, which of course opens in my other window, so let me drag that into the view window here. And what you see here is at the top corner, you see all the details of this particular DMA. Also, when was this file created? And you'll also see that green highlighted are your shortlist items. And when I scroll to the right, you see an overview of all the details of all the scores, plus all the comments of all the surveys. There's a similar Excel report for the quadrants. So if you want to have this view, if you want to have this quadrants view, but then in an Excel format, you click on this particular button here.
Yeah, maybe it's nice to show again, because I like that functionality, like in the top where you see the process overview as well. So
yeah,
when you move again, like now, if we're at almost the final version, then you see like, yeah, when you can go to, I just like that process when you go to management decision and then it's final. So then you lock the DMA and then it becomes the property of the company, basically.
So I will show you how this works for topics here. So you can do finalize here for topics. There's an approval form, because I'm able to authorize this. I can do this, but I can say this is a good list of topics. I say I have verified that the information is correct, and then I can finalize. And now you see that the topics have been finalized, and see it was changed to finalized. If I now go to the audit trail, you see this has been finalized. If I open this up, you see this is a good list of topics. Comment has ended there. And this is also signed off with a hash, so you can verify that later as well. And then you basically go through the process step by step until this process is unlocked, until the whole thing has become green. And then you see this whole process bar also becomes green. Right now it's still in progress. Yeah, and by the way, these are also clickable. So if I want to go to internal stakeholders, it will allow me to edit the stakeholders straight away. So it's also a way to navigate through the entire application. So if you're, for example, going through the shortlist, you go straight there, and then you can go back again. Are there questions around this?
Yeah, I have a question about the role of the internal and external stakeholders in this sheet. Is this a matter of completing the names background, or is there some more?
So at the moment, it's just putting in the name. The next phase, what we're doing with external stakeholders is that we actually select companies. So you look them up in the KVK. So you put in the KVK number, it will extract all the right information. And it will add that as a proper company. And you have to put in the representative with a name and an email address. So that company is also sent the end result.
Okay, the end result. But is there also ideas of including survey, so questionnaires?
Sure. So the point is the point of creating an account. So once you have a username and an email address, we will create a user account, and then that company can log in, look at it. They cannot obviously that there's a limited amount they can see. They cannot see the results of other stakeholders, because that could potentially be confidential.
But they can add their own score. Or...
It's possible, but whether that is desirable is another thing. Right. For example, you know, you are the consultant. You're quite familiar with the scoring system. Exactly. Not everybody is familiar with that scoring system, or with the like you said, what's the definition of global? What's the definition of local? That's something that you want to maintain some consistency throughout your entire DMA analysis. Right. If you just allow somebody out externally to score according to their own insights, that, you know, it may work out, but as a consultant, you might be a little bit more comfortable if you. So this is primarily developed as a tool for the consultant to record the results of their discussions.
Right.
That was our primary focus at the moment. Now, if you say, I would like my external stakeholders to fill a lot of it themselves without my assistance, that's obviously possible. Now, maybe these questions might be a little bit too complicated. The scoring system might be a bit too complicated, and you might have to build something more simple for those external.
Well, the way I do it now is using a questionnaire in combination with interviews. But the interpretation of all the answers, that's more a consultant's or the eye of the consultant, including with the steering group or however your project is being run. So to integrate it in the discussion about the scoring. And I myself, but I'm not in very large organizations at this moment. So I only have the experience that you do the scoring with your core team and not in separate groups.
This whole questionnaire is based on a generic questionnaire engine. That it's a very generic questionnaire, so I can build any questionnaire I like. And we just now made the DMA questionnaire. We fill that in, but it's a very flexible tool actually.
Yeah. Now I think the main purpose and the main added value for you as a consultancy, as an expert team, is to make an interpretation of these final scores, right? And also an interaction with the management decision. How do you interpret these kind of values in these these 4 quadrants? Because that means that your strategic decisions, will be based in one way or another on this kind of scores. So I think that is very important, that there is expertise from consultancy to bring the deeper meaning and also the value creation for the company to the future, that is your customer, based on these quadrants. That is the complex tasks and the added value.
No, I was wondering if there is a weighing option in this system. But as I understand, you put in all the surveys as a result from another task before, and then you put it in.
What do you mean by weighing? Is one question more important than the other? Is that what you mean?
Well, maybe sometimes you weigh different stakeholder groups because they have a different opinion or a different knowledge or aren't that close to the company. So you can weigh their different perspectives to another. So you can, for example, give internal vision a higher weight according to NGOs or whatever, but that's a possibility.
Right. Yeah, so what we haven't really shown yet so much is this. This is the results table. And here you see the FM. So you have multiple FM scores, and this is the IM. If you open that up, you can see how all of those scores individually, you can actually see there what is the score, you can see the comment. So how do all these different stakeholders score all these different items? And you can actually compare that here in the same row, and you have that in one overview. Of course, you have that in the Excel sheet as well, but I think this results table is a little bit more easy because you don't have to all the scrolling, and the Excel is a bit overwhelming. It's a very big document, whereas this you can just open and close and really focus on. For example, here you can see this is minus 133, and you can see all the comments as to how that was scored with all the different parameters and the comment that was included. Does that so that helps perhaps with the weighing or at least comparing how different stakeholders score the same item?
For example, if you have 150 employees who respond to a survey, you don't want their voices to maybe override the voice of a management team or maybe commissioner in the company. So you can weigh out, you can weigh the voices, but also, you can put a different weight on different stakeholders externally, of course, because they have a different view or a different expertise. So it might not be, otherwise you don't get a balanced review if people are not the same involved or not the same informated as the others.
Of course,
it's possible. Yesterday was the same, but you measure this kind of service as a group, that you do some kind of a value or a weighting factor, and then you can score it in your stakeholder group and see the effect. If you want to change the weight, then you have to put in different factors to see, okay, what's the influence of this particular measurements within this group on the rest of the stakeholder surveys.
So
But
you do that on before you put it
I
in
think so.
this system. Yeah.
The point is that all these things, all these internal, external surveys, they basically are an advisory in the end for your management decision. And in the end, it's the officers of the company that decide which is relevant, which is not relevant. And that is then captured in this management decision. And in the management decision, you see all the scores that were the outcome of your, but you can say, and of course this is insufficient as a comment, but you say it's just not relevant. Now I cannot change this because this was already approved, but if I would, if this was not yet approved and there's a high score, but it's lacking a comment, it will give a warning message. So if there's a score higher than a 4, in this case, and you haven't provided a comment, it will not allow you to save it. In other words, you have to at least justify why you are not taking this into account. And I think that is also a message that an accountant would like to know. So if, let's say, there are stakeholders who say, this is very important for me, but as an officer say, well, I've got reason to believe that is not as important, and these are my reasons, that this is where you document all those decisions.